Sequel 129 of the Church of Uganda at 150 years, a celebration. Welcome. In this particular sequel, the official visit of the second in line to the throne by 1925, the Duke and the Duchess of York, arrive in Uganda. Welcome. The Duke and the Duchess of York, Prince Fred Arthur George, and his wife Elizabeth, arrived in Uganda. It was the first royal visit to Uganda ever by the British. We may recall that in 1907, the junior minister at the colonial office, Churchill, visited, but he was not a royal. This royal was the second son of the British King George V. The British Protectorate gave a 2-day official public holiday in Uganda. That was Saturday 14th, which was to be a half day, and Monday 16th of the month of February 1925 to celebrate the visit. The Duke and the Duchess, on arrival, saw a spectacle unrivaled anywhere, as close to 200 boats at sea belonging to fishermen and the Royal Navy lined up in a performance that stunned the second in line to the throne of Great Britain. Then a 21-gun salute went off before the visitor arrived at the Entebbe landing site of Lake Victoria and was received by the acting governor, E.B. Jarvis, who was also the chief secretary of the Uganda Protectorate. Chwa II, the Kabaka, and Aprokagwa, the Katikiro, received the royal visitors at the government house in Entebbe. And so the following day, on Sunday, the 15th February 1925, the visitors went for a church service at Namirembe Cathedral. They said that they were pleased with the unique singing by the cathedral all-male choir. The visitors then had lunch with Bishop Willis and Mrs. Willis at the Bishop's Palace. In the afternoon, they visited Erobaga White Father's mission station, and they also visited the Nsambia Mill Hill Missionaries Station, and they returned to Entebbe Government House to rest. The following day, they visited Bulangi, where Kabaka Chwa addressed the Rukiko and the guests and invited the Duke of York to speak. The Duke of York showered praise on Buganda and all the other kingdoms, including Bunyoro, which boycotted him. Yes, the Banyoro and the British have a history now, so they didn't show up. Now, the Duke announced that his father had in 1917, much earlier, conferred the honor of a knighthood on Kabaka Chwa II, and therefore it was time to decorate him. So he did so with the insignia of the CMG, which had made Chwa become a Sir. The Kabaka, Sir Daudi Chwa, asked the Duke of York to return his appreciation for the knighthood to his father, King George V. The Duke gave presents of gold medals, while Sir Daudi Chwa II donated well-woven ivory tusks and other woven ornaments to the visiting Duke. Outside, there were ceremonies and a luncheon before the Duke returned to Entebbe Government House to rest. The following day, the Duke visited the Ripon Falls in Jinja and moved on to Manction Falls in Bunyoro Kingdom. 3 royals had earlier visited Kenya in December 1924. And they had gone all the way to Semliki National Park in Tanganyika. And so on their return, this Duke and the Duchess of York, they used the northern corridor. So they passed through the Upper Nile to Sudan, and they went hunting, and then through Egypt, and returned home, where they reached in May 1925. Traveling in those days was not easy. So the Duke and the Duchess of York married in April 1923. So they were newly married couples, barely 1 year in marriage. And so by the time of their visit, they had not yet got any child. You will recall that these are actually the parents of who you know as Queen Elizabeth II. But let me not go there. We are so far away in 1924, so let's stick there. Brethren, the British monarchs and the British members of the royal family continued to visit Uganda. And this continued all the way before independence and all the way after independence. And as a matter of fact, to date, we keep receiving royals, including the monarchs themselves. The monarch first visited in 1954, and the monarch followed up that visit, the same monarch, in 2007 for the Commonwealth Summit. So there is no doubt that this country and Great Britain, of course, as members of the Commonwealth of Nations, nations that were once ruled by Great Britain, we have a common and steady and traditional relationship with Great Britain. Now, since the first missionaries to Uganda came from Great Britain, then there is no doubt that there was always a connection between the British Church and the British state. And that was simply transferred as far as Uganda is concerned, that there is a very big relationship between the church and the state. And this can be traced as far as the beginning of Christianity in Uganda in 1877. There has always been that attachment between the state and the church. And that goes on up to this very day. If we can appreciate that as a church, then I have no other words other than saying that may the good Lord bless us all.